it's interesting. When I grew up as a kid, my mother's favorite soap opera was World Turns. But she didn't address the show as the World Turns. She always said, whenever I interrupted her when I was a young kid, I said, Mama, can I have a glass? And she says, okay, son, I'm watching Lisa.
That's wonderful. I've heard that from many people. I think that is the highest compliment at all.
Yeah, it's interesting considering that you, Don Hastings, Helen Wagner, have all been an integral part of this program, and congratulations belatedly on 50 years. Obviously you've been a part of it for almost 50 years, along with Don, but it's nice work if you can get it.
Well, that is certainly true.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And it just opens the door to do so many other things, so that's great.
Speaking of so many other different things, that's also what I wanted to speak with you about, because you are, even though, and I wish they would have more of a storyline for Lisa and for the other core characters, but I can understand, and we'll touch base about more or less putting the focus on those fine young hotties that you had talked about back in 2000. We'll talk about that later on, but obviously, even though that you might not have be getting as much airtime, and hopefully anybody who listens to this interview could more or less call out the production offices and say, get Eileen on camera more and give her a much meatier storyline. But I know that you're a very busy girl behind the scenes as well, especially with your cabaret act.
That is true. Yes, I love my music. I think my musicians are terrific. And this is really a great joy for me, because it's learning new material and perfecting it and having a live audience. And
it's something that's missing nowadays, because I don't think, obviously, my generation has experienced live performances, but nothing as intimate as a setting like this, unless, of course, they go to New York and happen to see productions like this. But obviously, back in the day, you couldn't think of seeing any performances like this. Well, no, I take that back. You could go to these. You could go to, I guess you would call them cabaret shows. I remember growing up watching this British science fiction series called Doctor Who, and one of the actors who played the Doctor, his name was John Pertwee, and anytime he appeared at a convention for the show, he would always have a cabaret act on Saturday night. So that would be a taste to the fans of what it was like to actually go to one of these things in Britain on the West End, or in particular in New York and Soho. So I'm glad to see that you're still doing something. I know that you're also preparing for something like this down the road very shortly. I think with Michael Feinstein. Am I right?
At Michael Feinstein at the Room, Feinstein's. He won't be working with me. I know I'll be doing my own show. Yeah, but he is. I am crazy about him. I think he is such a talented man.
Tell me about what it's like to put something like this together, because I know that you have a number of CDs released, and I know that when you graduated from college, your degree was not in acting, was not in drama, it was in music.
It was.
So obviously trying to put a show like this together is an absolute joy for you. I trust it's a labor of love.
It is, but it's a lot of work, and the finding the material is very interesting to me, because I don't just sing songs. I tie it in together, and I have a reason for doing a particular song, and I tell some rather silly stories that the audience seems to like of my life. Oh, and you know what else that I have just done? I've just completed putting together a compilation of the songs I did back in 1970, 70 to about 76.
Wow.
And it was great fun to play those. They were LPs, and to pick this song and that song and the other and putting it together in a CD. And it was surprising, because I didn't know whether I wanted to listen to those old records or not. And when I heard it, I was shocked. I thought, this isn't bad. It's just different, and it's interesting what I do now compared to what I did back then.
That's good. Yes. Well, obviously, growing up in North Carolina, and your daddy being a minister and such, music was an integral part of your life growing up as a kid. What inspired you to become to more or less get involved in drama and acting and involved in performing arts?
Well, that's very easy. My daddy, being a minister, always had his audience or the congregation. My mother was a school teacher. She had her classrooms. I had to have my audience. And my first performance was when I was just a little girl. I was 2, and I didn't think of this as a performance. I really misbehaved. It was Good Friday, and I was at the church, and they were singing this hymn, "There is a fountain filled with blood." And being a baby, I thought, oh, blood? That's terrible. And I ran up and before my mother could stop me and stood up at the altar and sang, "Mammy's little baby loves shortening bread." And the audience just loved it. And my daddy gave me a public spanking, my first spanking.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, "Woman, come get your child." And Mother said, "Man, she's your daughter too."
And everybody thought it was an act, I suppose.
I guess they did. But I was always performing. And one time my grandfather was a minister too. And my mother was showing me a beautiful evening dress she wore in college. And she put it out on the bed. And I thought, oh, that's so beautiful. It was pink. And it was tulle or something. And then they had a revival service or something at the church, which was right next door. And I told my babysitter, I've decided to go to church. And I had put on my mother's evening dress, had on her shoes, which I was about 5 then, and her hat and her purse, and I was serious. And I walked into the side door of the church, like where we always went, and smiled at the congregation and sat down. And my mother almost passed out. And the audience, the congregation, thought that was part of my grandfather's sermon that he was preaching, because it was children follow into the footsteps of their parents.
Interesting. Interesting. I know that Eileen Fulton is a stage name, and of course, if you want to find out what her Christian name is, you'll have to check out our website, eileenfulton.com, to find that out.
Okay.
But obviously, how did you? I know that most folks tend to get certain names from just in certain interesting ways. How did you adopt the name of Eileen Fulton for your career?
I was just trying to think of something different. Well, I was married then to husband 1, and I was trying to think. We were in the theater together, and I was thinking, I've got to change my name, because being the name that we're not going to say, because people are going to have to look it up. Yeah. I thought, people can't spell that, and they mispronounce it, so I will change my name. And I wanted to change my first name as well, and I didn't want to use my married name. And so he said, well, why don't you use the name Eileen? And I thought he said Eileen. I thought, that's nice. And Fulton is a family name. And so I thought, well, that's pretty. So I put down Eileen Fulton. And he was on the road. When he came back, I showed him my equity card. I was very proud. And he said, I didn't say that. I said Eileen. Oh, I've just had time with my names all these years.
I know that you've done a lot of work before World Turns. I know that you had the pleasure, at least I hope it was, of working with Anne Francis for a film called Girl Tonight.
Yeah, I loved her. She was the most gracious person. That was my first film, and the character I played was named Lisa. And I got that, and the same about the next week I got Lisa on As the World Turns. It all came together.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know that in addition to that, your resume also includes a number of performances with the likes of Hal Holbrook, Abe Lincoln in Illinois.
Oh, yes, yeah. He's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I was fascinated with his work. When we rehearsed Abe Lincoln in Illinois, all during rehearsal, I saw this. At that time, when we were very young, I saw this young man and his darling little boy face. And when he came on the stage with his miraculous makeup, he looked like Abe Lincoln. And none of us on that first run-through we couldn't remember a word. It was like working with looking at a penny that had come to life.